The doors are sealed shut, 40 feet of solid bronze, and there is no visible mechanism, no rope or lever, nothing a crowd of 2,000 people can see. A priest raises his arms toward the altar. A fire is lit, and then, with no human hand touching them, the massive temple doors slowly begin to swing open on their own. The crowd gasps. Some fall to their knees. As far as they can tell, they have just watched a god personally answer a prayer. What they don't know is that they're looking at hydraulics, expanding air, and a hidden reservoir of water, engineered decades earlier by a man who understood physics better than almost anyone alive. This wasn't magic. It wasn't even meant to deceive out of cruelty, necessarily. It was, in many cases, one of the most sophisticated special effects industries in human history, and it worked because the audience had absolutely no framework for understanding what they were witnessing. Weeping statues, voices that seemed to come from nowhere, a sun that appeared to obey a temple's design on command. This is the story of how ancient priests, rulers, and engineers used real science to convince entire civilizations they were witnessing the divine. Chapter 1. The Oracle's Vapors. At Delphi, in ancient Greece, a priestess known as the Pythia sat above a crack in the earth and delivered prophecies believed to come directly from the god Apollo himself. Her words often strange, fragmented, and delivered in what witnesses described as a trance-like state. For centuries, some scholars dismissed this entirely as theater. Then, in the early 2000s, geologists discovered that the temple sat directly above a geological fault line, one capable of releasing intoxicating gases, including ethylene, up through exactly the kind of crack the Pythia was seated over. The ancient Greeks had no concept of hydrocarbon gases or their psychoactive effects. What they had was a priestess who reliably entered altered states of consciousness in a specific, sacred location, and a powerful religious institution built entirely around interpreting whatever she said next. Whether the priests themselves ever fully understood the geology beneath their own temple remains a genuine mystery, but the oracle's reputation endured for centuries, shaping the decisions of kings and city-states alike. Chapter 2. The engineer behind the miracle doors. In ancient Alexandria, an engineer named Hero designed an extraordinary device, a temple door that appeared to open entirely on its own the instant a sacrificial fire was lit on the altar outside. The mechanism relied on genuinely sophisticated physics. Heat from the fire expanded air, trapped inside a sealed chamber, forcing water through hidden pipes into a bucket connected by rope to a rotating cylinder, which slowly and silently pulled the massive doors open. To worshippers gathered outside, this looked exactly like divine intervention. Immediate, silent, and utterly inexplicable. Hero documented dozens of similar devices in his surviving writings. Coin-operated dispensers, statues that appeared to pour wine unassisted, mechanical birds that sang using hidden water pressure. Some of these inventions were genuinely intended purely as clever entertainment. Others were installed directly inside active temples, blurring the line between engineering demonstration and outright religious manipulation. Chapter 3. Predicting the sun's disappearance. Few displays of apparent divine power were more dramatic, or more genuinely terrifying, than a total solar eclipse suddenly darkening the sky in the middle of the day. Ancient astronomers in multiple independent civilizations, including Babylon and later China, eventually developed the mathematical ability to predict roughly when eclipses would occur based on centuries of carefully recorded observations. Rulers and priests who possessed this specific knowledge could position themselves as uniquely capable of anticipating or even seemingly commanding the sun and moon themselves. Several historical accounts describe rulers using advanced eclipse knowledge for genuinely significant political advantage, timing important announcements, ceremonies, or even military campaigns to coincide precisely with a predicted celestial event. To ordinary people with no access to this specialized astronomical knowledge, a ruler who appeared to control when daylight itself would vanish commanded a truly formidable, almost unquestionable form of authority. Chapter 4. Statues that spoke. Several ancient temples featured statues of gods that appear to speak directly to worshippers, delivering answers, warnings, or blessings in eerie, disembodied voices. Historical accounts describe hidden speaking tubes running through walls and statue bases, allowing a priest positioned in a completely separate room to speak directly through a carved statue's open mouth without ever being seen. Some accounts even describe genuine ventriloquism-style techniques being employed, priests trained specifically to project their voice convincingly while appearing to remain silent themselves before the assembled crowd. The Greek writer Lucian, writing with open skepticism, specifically and directly accused certain religious figures of his era of using exactly this kind of elaborate acoustic trickery. Whether every single instance was genuinely intended as deliberate deception, or whether some priests themselves came to sincerely believe they were serving as a legitimate divine vessel, remains a genuinely fascinating and frequently debated historical question. Modern researchers who have reconstructed several of these hidden speaking tube systems note just how convincing the effect would have been in near total darkness, lit only by flickering torchlight, with the sound seeming to rise directly from stone rather than from any living human throat. Chapter 5. The Weeping Statues. Statues that appeared to weep, sweat, or occasionally even bleed real liquid were reported across numerous ancient cultures, frequently interpreted as an urgent, unmistakable sign of powerful divine displeasure or emotion. Some of these specific phenomena can be explained through genuinely simple physics. Condensation naturally forming on cool stone surfaces under specific humidity conditions, closely resembling tears to an untrained eye. Other documented cases, however, involve deliberately hidden reservoirs and cleverly designed tubes specifically engineered to release liquid on cue, sometimes red-tinted to convincingly resemble blood. Temple officials in certain documented cases were later discovered to have installed these elaborate mechanisms deliberately, often specifically timed to occur during politically convenient or strategically significant moments. A statue that wept at precisely the right moment could powerfully influence a king's difficult decision, rally a nervous, wavering army, or dramatically increase valuable pilgrimage traffic and religious donations to a specific temple. Chapter 6. Machines that made thunder. Several ancient cultures developed genuinely functional mechanical devices specifically designed to simulate the terrifying sound of thunder or the sudden, blinding flash of lightning during elaborate religious ceremonies. Historical accounts describe large metal sheets deliberately shaken to convincingly mimic rolling thunder, alongside carefully engineered flash powder combinations capable of producing sudden, brilliant bursts of light on command. These effects were frequently timed with real theatrical precision, coordinated carefully to coincide with a priest's dramatic prayer, a ruler's formal declaration, or a particularly significant, carefully orchestrated moment within an important ceremony. The psychological impact on a crowd already primed and eager to witness genuine divine power could be genuinely overwhelming and profound. Some historians argue these specific techniques functioned as a direct, sophisticated ancient precursor to modern theatrical special effects, developed for spiritual purposes centuries before anyone conceived of a stage play. Chapter 7. The Voice That Filled the Temple. Ancient architects frequently designed important temples and sacred spaces with genuinely remarkable, deliberate acoustic properties, allowing a single priest's ordinary voice to fill an entire massive space with an eerie, otherworldly, seemingly amplified quality. Certain surviving structures feature carefully placed curved surfaces and precisely calculated resonant chambers specifically capable of dramatically amplifying and subtly distorting human speech in genuinely unsettling ways. A priest speaking at completely normal volume from exactly the right, carefully chosen position could sound, to those gathered below, as though his voice was somehow emanating from everywhere within the sacred space simultaneously. This architectural technique required absolutely no hidden mechanical trickery whatsoever, simply a sophisticated, hard-won understanding of how sound waves genuinely behave within very specific, enclosed spaces. Whether ancient architects fully understood the underlying acoustic physics involved or arrived at these techniques through patient generations of careful trial and error, the dramatic religious effect achieved was, by every account, remarkably and consistently the same. Chapter 8. The Sun that Obeyed the Temple. Several major Mesoamerican civilizations, including the Maya and later the Aztec, constructed massive temples and pyramids with truly extraordinary astronomical precision, specifically designed to align perfectly with the sun's position during significant solstices and equinoxes. On these carefully chosen, precisely calculated days, sunlight would fall in dramatic, visually stunning patterns, sometimes creating the striking illusion of a giant serpent slowly slithering directly down a pyramid's stepped stone edge. These carefully timed celestial events were deliberately staged as elaborate, unmistakable public demonstrations of a ruler's genuine divine connection and legitimate authority to govern. Building a structure this astronomically precise required generations of extraordinarily careful observation and sophisticated mathematical calculation, knowledge that was frequently restricted specifically to a small, powerful priestly class. When the sun itself appeared to obey a temple's carefully engineered design on cue, exactly as predicted, the underlying political message being sent to observers was unmistakably, powerfully clear. Similar solar and lunar alignments appear in monuments across entirely unconnected ancient cultures, from Egypt to the British Isles, suggesting this specific strategy, tying earthly power directly to celestial certainty, was discovered again and again by civilizations that never once made contact with one another. None of this necessarily means every single ancient religious experience was a calculated, cynical fraud from beginning to end. Many priests and rulers likely believe, at least in part, that they were genuinely serving as legitimate instruments of the divine, even while actively employing very real, deliberately engineered technical tricks. What these fascinating stories reveal instead is something arguably more genuinely interesting. Ancient humans were remarkably sophisticated observers of the natural world, capable of real, functional science, and entirely willing to fully weaponize that hard-won knowledge in the specific service of power and genuine belief. The line separating engineering from miracle and manipulation from sincere faith was never nearly as clear or as simple as it might comfortably seem today. If you found this look into how ancient humans engineered the divine as fascinating as we did, consider subscribing for more buried and forgotten stories from history.